Welcome, everybody. With just a short period of time to go between now and the AdTECH Out of Home Sydney conference, we thought it was a good idea to have a chat with Joe Copley, who's with me today. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Adrian. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Joe and I have been meeting on Zoom for the last an hour every week. I think for probably the last 2 or 3 months planning the conference. Joe's put an excellent agenda together. We've done very little in that really. We'll talk about the agenda in a second, but Joe is the managing director of Seedooh, which is an independent verification startup in Sydney, and he manages the relationships in Europe. Joe, do you want to just tell us a little bit about Seedooh quickly before we start?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking, Adrian. Seedooh is an independent verification platform, and it completely automates the campaign reporting process, standardizes data sets at tremendous scale. It's the first of its kind globally. It's been in production at a sector level in out-of-home in Australia now for a few years.
Do you still class yourselves as a startup? I know you run quite mean and lean with people in Melbourne and Sydney, and you've been spending a lot of time, pre-lockdown, in Europe because you've got a big expansion plans in Europe. Do you still count yourself?
We've travelled a lot. Yeah. We think about it as a scale-up phase now, Adrian. To be honest. We've completed the proof of concept in Australia and demonstrated the platform at market scale. But you're right, there's not so much traveling going on these days, of course, but thankfully, Zoom and other methods are a good way to keep in touch with people around the world.
Okay. Now, I think you first came to our attention, or Seedooh did, in New York many years ago when your CEO came along and spoke at our investor conference. And we've seen you since then attend our AdTECH conferences in Amsterdam and in London and indeed in New York. So you were there last year in Sydney. This year we've asked you to chair it. So thank you for doing that. As I said earlier, you've done a great job with the agenda. One of the things with Seedooh is I think you help us a lot because a lot of people outside of Australia see Australia as being a good place for innovation and a good place for startups. You've helped us with that because people are looking at your verification stuff with new eyes. We don't have anything like that in many other countries. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think so. Seedooh is, as I say, one of a kind, really. Australia was the proof of concept market. I think it was recognized first in Australia that connecting and standardizing the factual campaign delivery data is a foundational step towards the future. I think it's critical to enable digital out-of-home to compete with other channels in that increasingly connected and digitized future. And, that was recognized and has now been delivered in Australia from a factual reporting perspective.
Absolutely. And there's lots of other innovations going on in Australia, which the rest of the world's looking upon. I think that's why probably our conference last year was it was our largest by a long way. Without COVID and the pandemic, it would be larger this year, I think would be fair to say.
I think so, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, considering we've got a sold out venue with just attendees from Sydney. Last year there was quite a few attendees from New Zealand as well.
We have a dozen attendees
in Queensland.
Yeah, and of course Melbourne and other regions in Australia.
That's right.
I've also gone on record to say that you'd probably get dozens of people from Europe and North America coming, I think, to Sydney if it was normal. So let's hope that will happen next year. Just going onto the agenda very quickly, so we let our readers, listeners, viewers know about what's in store. You've got a bit of a coup with the keynote. We've got Pat Darcy from Dentsu, which is always good. We've never had a keynote, I think, from sort of I won't say outside the industry because of course he is in the advertising industry, but he's not a well-known out-of-home person. What's in store for that keynote, do you think?
Yeah, Pat Darcy is the Chief Data and Technology Officer at Dentsu. I've asked him to share his thoughts on the big picture for AdTech across all channels, with reference obviously to how out-of-home fits into that omni-channel AdTech future. I think it's really critical that we in out-of-home consider that bigger picture, because marketers don't see channels in isolation, and neither do consumers. A brand is a brand, whether you connect with it on your television, on your mobile device, on a billboard, or on the shelves at the supermarket. Out-of-home is a really valuable piece of the puzzle, I think it's incumbent on all of us to figure out how to demonstrate that value into the connected future.
Right, and you've also jumped on, a bandwagon's the wrong word, but you've jumped on something of a trend. Verizon seemed to be on a roll globally, getting their story out, doing PR, doing marketing, and thankfully for us as well, sponsoring events. I noticed two things this past week. Verizon Media are sponsoring the DPAA Global Video Everywhere Summit, which happens in October, after our conference. The Verizon CEO is doing the digital keynote, the first digital keynote at CES as well. And we've got them at lunchtime doing what I think is one of their first out-of-home presentations. There's a Verizon guy with somebody from LifeSite. What are we expecting from that lunchtime session from them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm really looking forward to seeing the presentation. I haven't seen any of the content yet, but they're pulling together some really rich data sets with really contemporary relevance for the COVID period, if you like, which should reveal some new and valuable insights into how people have been moving around and continue to behave during these restricted times. It's a very data-focused presentation with respect to the insights that you can draw from that and how you can use that data to demonstrate the effectiveness, not just of out-of-home, but out-of-home as a component of a campaign.
Yeah, I guess with Verizon and all the data they have, it being a data-centric presentation makes a lot of sense. Actually, the day after AdTECH Out-of-Home Sydney, we're doing a webinar with Broadsign, Global Out-of-Home Insights webinar, which normally you would be involved in, but I know you've been busy with the Sydney conference. But we've got Tim Harvey from Knitting Media, who's speaking in Sydney as well. And then a good friend of ours, Fiona Fitzgibbon, who's also speaking in Sydney, also doing the webinar. And one of the big topics of the debate during the webinar will be data and where the different sources are, whether it be first-party data, second-party data, or third-party data from Selco companies. So it's obviously of really interest to people at the moment. So you're right, that's going to be a good session. But hats off again for securing them to speak. I think that's going to be a really, really good session. And then to end the day, there's lots of good panels. So you've made a good mix. If we've got one person standing on the stage, we've got a couple of people talking, and we've got our usual mix of panels that normally get good interaction with the audience as well. But to end it, you've got the guys from PwC, a guy from PwC. Explain how their global advisory board is it? I think it is how that works. And
yeah, so Dan's a director. Yeah, Dan Robbins is a director of PwC CMO advisory. So he's working with Australia's largest clients and brands to help them understand how to get better effect from their communications investment. And Dan's going to chair that panel, and it's the last panel of the day. So we're hoping that the panelists are going to pay attention all day and address some of the recurring themes and topics that come up during the day, certainly as part of the audience participation, the Q&A. So we've got Sandra from Vistar, we've got Braden from VMO, and we've had a late withdrawal from the speakers on that panel. So I'm going to step up to the plate or into the firing line, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, well, hopefully the interaction will be hot by 4 o'clock. So it'll be the firing line, I think, Joe, is the answer. So I'd just like to, a note to anybody who's watching this and attending the event. We always implore our audience to be interactive, to speak. We've got the issue of social distancing. There's a large cinema, but there's lots of space. But we want people to speak up. I think you've got a couple of helpers who will be roaming the floor. We've done this for a couple of conferences last year. Last year, you remember there was myself and Steve Nesbitt who were helping Matt from Hivestack, who chaired the event. But we were helped really by the fantastic audience we had. There were so many people there wanting to say something. I mean, we had dozens of people from Deco and from VMO and from QMS and from Media. We had, I say, a dozen people from New Zealand and lots of people from the media specialists. And they were all very keen on speaking. Some of the speakers got a bit of a hard time, if I remember, but that's good in a nice, positive but nice way, in your typical Australian way. But we do want to encourage people to ask questions, don't we, Joe?
Yeah, of course, and there's always a very healthy level of debate in out of home around the world, and Australia is no different to that. And I think a lot of the people who came to the conference last year have mentioned to me that they were surprised at the level of audience participation. Most conferences that they go to, it's not as vigorous a debate. So yeah, really looking forward to
I like
getting the
that word, the
conversation
vigorous
going
debate. Yes.
again.
That's good. Great. Well, just to remind everybody then, Joe Copley's chairing it. If you reach out to him if you've got any questions. The event takes place Wednesday, September the 23rd, which is coming up really, really soon. It is sold out. There is a waiting list. It's going to be a great event. It won't be our largest this year, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, but we've crammed in 100 people, and it's going to be a good one. So if you're watching this, I apologize that I won't be with you, but good luck to everybody. And thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Adrian.